Hi, my name is Roxanne Marion, and I wanted to jump on here today to talk about something that is a little bit different from my normal channel or my channel. I usually talk about multiple sclerosis, but to be honest, let's be honest, um, I believe that everyone can learn from this because there come times when all of us are struggling or feel like we just can't go on anymore. And about 2 years after being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, I felt that way, that I didn't want to go on anymore. And I attempted suicide. And right now, with the state of where young people are and young people are in our world, and reading the news the other day and hearing the news about Adriana Kuch, who died by suicide after people in her school beat her up and then posted it the next day, I felt a push to go ahead and talk about this because I often find myself trying to quiet myself about this, but really is something that touches my heart. And that is suicide. So you see, I'm a little different because usually I'm just all, "Ah," but right now, I really feel like it's necessary that somebody just come in is completely honest with those of you who are in high school or starting off in college, or young people who are in middle school or wherever you are. So I'm going to start by reading this newsletter that was printed in a high school newspaper, and it was printed 7 years ago, actually. And I did not look up the pronunciation of this young lady's name. I'm going to say Sorcy. Her name is Sorcy Kennedy Hill, spelling Saoirse. And she printed this in the Deerfield Scroll when she was in high school. So I'm going to read it, and then I will talk to you about it on the other side. It's called Mental Illness at Deerfield. When you were little, did you ever have friends your mom made you hang out with, even though you didn't want to? Then those friends kept showing up, and you were confused and sick of them. Soon enough, those friends were around so much that you got used to them. Finally, those friends were always with you and never left, and you almost began to enjoy hanging around them or having them around. Until last year, this was my relationship with my mental illness. My depression took root at the beginning of my middle school years and will be with me for the rest of my life. Although I was mostly a happy child, I suffered bouts of deep sadness that felt like a heavy boulder on my chest. These bouts would come and go, but they did not outwardly affect me until I was a new sophomore at Deerfield. We all know that some people find winter at Deerfield lonely, dark, and long. I began isolating myself in my room, pulling away from my relationships and giving up on schoolwork. During the first few weeks of spring term, my sadness surrounded me constantly. But that summer, after my sophomore year, my friend depression rarely came around anymore, and I was thankful for her absence. 2 weeks before my junior year began, however, my friend came back and planned to stay. My sense of well being was already compromised, and I totally lost it after someone I knew and loved broke serious sexual boundaries with me. I did the worst thing a victim can do, and I pretended it hadn't happened. This all became too much, and I attempted to take my own life. I returned to school for the fall of my junior year, but I realized that I could not handle the stresses Deerfield presented. I went to treatment for my depression and returned to the Valley for my senior year. Coming back from medical leave was definitely not what I expected. I saw a stark contrast between my treatment facility, a place full of aware and accepting people, and my experience at Deerfield. Although my friends were extremely supportive, they seemed to be the only ones who knew what had been going on in my life for the past year. Dr. Josh Ryland, director of counseling at Deerfield, what has explained to me that federal laws designed to protect patient privacy constrain what information can be shared in workplaces and schools. There is a strong firewall between what happens in the health center and the other adults in the community due to HIPAA, he said. This law determines how health information can and cannot be shared. HIPAA was designed to protect patient privacy, yet, in my experience, it left me feeling very alone. I didn't care that students thought that I had left because of an eating disorder or that I had been bullied, but it concerned me that my teachers and advisors didn't know what I had been going through. Even though it was helpful for me to discuss my struggles with all of those important people in my life, it was still uncomfortable and it was hard for me to take the initiative. In the future, I hope that the health center reaches out to students before they return from medical leave in order to discuss how the school can make their adjustment back to Deerfield less difficult. If they had reached out to me, I would have let them know that I wanted my circumstances shared with my teachers and advisors before I returned to campus. This would have made my transition a lot easier. Deerfield is one of the top educational institutions in the country, yet no one seems to know how to talk about mental illness. People talk about cancer freely. Why is it so difficult to discuss the effects of depression, bipolar, anxiety, or schizophrenic disorders? Just because the illness may not be outwardly visible doesn't mean the person suffering from it isn't struggling. I have experienced a lot of stigma surrounding mental health on Deerfield's campus. As students, we have the power to end that immediately. Stigma places blame on the person suffering from the illness and makes them ashamed to talk openly about what they're going through. Teachers and students on our campus can do their best to be more aware when discussing mental health issues. If someone says they're feeling depressed, a good way to respond would be, what are some other things you're feeling? What do you think has brought this on? If you don't feel comfortable saying either of those, say, I don't understand what you're going through, but I'm here for support. Too often people speak before they think, and that can damage the trust in a relationship. If someone confides in you, try not to say, it's all in your mind, or lighten up, or my personal favorite, happiness is a choice. No, it's really not. When I'm in a really bad place, I do my best to surround myself with positive people and upbeat music, but too often it feels as if I'm drowning in my own thoughts, while everyone else seems to be breathing comfortably. Many people are suffering, but because many people feel uncomfortable talking about it, no one is aware of the sufferers. This leaves people feeling even more alone. Since I spoke about this issue at school meeting, I have had countless people approach me telling me that they too are struggling and would love to be more open about it. I am calling all members of the Deerfield community to come forward and talk freely about mental health issues. We are all either struggling or know someone who is battling an illness. Let's come together to make our community more inclusive and comfortable. So, keep my glasses on. So, as I read that and I kept saying Deerfield, I was hoping that you could take the name of your school, your institution, whether it be college or middle school, and put that name in in that in that section and say, well, this is happening at whatever school. I wanted to share that with you to say that there are kids all over the country. There are kids and young people all over the country who are struggling with mental health. Heck, there are adults all over this country who are struggling with mental health. And the biggest problem with it is that we are not honest about it. We quite frankly walk around as though it's not happening to us. And those of us who do want to be open about it, just as this young lady stated in this paper, people want to act like we're crazy. Like, what do you mean? I've never gone through such a thing. Those are lies. Those are lies. For those of you who are in high school, I kid you not, probably more people than you think could tell you. When I say more people, I mean the adults in your life could tell you they hated high school. They hated high school. And I don't know who we are protecting or who we are kidding, but high school is one of the hardest times in your life. Believe me, your lives will be so much more pleasant, if you will, more pleasant after you get out of there. But we all have to go through it. Doesn't make it right for what people do to you in high school when they are bullying you, when they are beating up on you, when they are sharing things on social media that aren't true. Even if they are true, if it's not for everybody to hear, it's not their right to share it. But I thought about you all the other day, and as I said, what happened with Adriana Kuch, it was just one more instance in the media that made me just want to pull my hair out and say, why aren't we talking to our students or young people about suicide? We're acting as though they don't know what it is. And are we really going to wait until it happens before we tell them, or tell them, don't? Because to be honest, this one thing that happens, it's going to seem so minimal to you in a week, possibly less depending on who you are. So I wrote out, if I could talk to the youth today, I want them to know that this is just a small part of a bigger picture. and that this is not to minimize what you're feeling or experiencing. And it doesn't even mean that something else won't come up and cause you any pain. It means that we take each of those situations and figure out how we could get through it better the next time. But if you're not here, you'll never know if you came up with the perfect solution to your problem. And if you are here the next day and it isn't exactly how you thought it would turn out, tweak it for another time or even for another person. Tomorrow is a new day. I know you've probably not been alive long enough to know that the thing that seems so big and such a big deal to you really wasn't that big of a deal to everyone else. It took me a long time to figure this out. The girl in middle school who made fun of my hair in class and everyone laughed. You see, that was a big deal to me. So I remember it the next day and apparently all these years later. But if I ask anyone at our next high school reunion if they remember her making fun of me while we were in middle school because of my hair, they're probably going to say no, because it wasn't that big of a deal to them. So I say that to say this. Things seem huge to us. I'm going to take these off because I'm getting a glare. Things seem huge to us in the moment. And we want to get out of that pain, and we want to end the pain or the fact that people are laughing at us and making fun of us, and we just want to hide. But most specifically, when in this newsletter, she stated that was like a boulder sitting on her chest. Depression was a boulder sitting on her chest. The first time I read that, I was like, that's it. Those are the words I've always looked for to explain how I felt when I felt so sad and I felt like I just couldn't explain it to anybody what was wrong. It was like a boulder was sitting on my chest. With that said, when I attempted to take my own life and I sat on the floor in my living room with pills in my hand, the voices of my nieces and nephew came in my head. And I could hear them saying, "Where's Auntie? Where's Auntie? I want Auntie." As clear as day, as if they were in the room and they were miles away. And I stopped. And I stopped because at that moment, I just didn't want them to go through that, wondering where I was, because what kid doesn't love their auntie? Now, 20 years later, 22 years later to be exact, I can tell you this. I'm so thankful that I didn't do it, because I have these little people in my life. Again, was from my niece. One of the nieces that I thought about that day when I started to take something to take my life. She has 3 kids, and I love them so much. And the idea that I would have missed their births and their lives, or my other niece graduating from law school, or my nephew starting his own business, or their mother getting married, or even me starting my own business. There are so many things that are going to happen in your life. that you just don't want to miss out on. And I know this seems so big, like a boulder on your chest, and it's painful. Find someone to talk to. And yes, some of you are going to be able to find friends to talk to. And not that your friends aren't trustworthy, but find an adult to talk to because they have so much life behind them, life experience behind them. And they could tell you some things. If they're honest, they could tell you some things because I'm going to sit here in all this honesty and tell you, I hated high school. I didn't think I'd make it out, and I did. And I hated going away to college because we didn't know as much as we know about college now, or I didn't know as much about college as you all are privy to now. But I made it through it. I was sexually assaulted, and I thought that I would die. And I made it through it with counseling. And I thought that being diagnosed with MS, although I didn't have Google back then, I'm not that old, guys, but Google was not available to me back then. So I didn't look it up. So I didn't have it in my head what it actually was. And here I am 23 years later after being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I'm just fine. You want to stick around. Okay. And I want you to stick around. And your parents want you to stick around. They have so much love for you. And I'm going to end on this as I talk about parents. I can say they have so much love for you, and you might just not know how much because after I thought about taking pills and they did a welfare check on me, and I ended up going to the hospital, and my parents came and everything. But a few months later, my mom told me that she was so sad that I would want to take my own life because she tried so hard to have me. She tried so hard. My mom had 2 or 3 miscarriages before she was pregnant with me. She tried so hard to have me, and she was so sad to think that I wanted to take my life. People love you. And in the moment when you're going through stuff and people are being mean to you and they're bullying you and putting stuff on social media, and I will admit, didn't have to put up with that back then. We didn't have cell phones. We had a house phone. It's on the wall. But you can find strategies and techniques to get through it. You can find people to talk to. And you can reach out to me. Reach out to me here on social media, and hopefully I can give you a few words of encouragement. But I just wanted to leave you all with that your parents love you. Be honest and open with them. Talk to them about what you're going through and what you're feeling and what is actually going on. Because even though there are a lot of people around you who might know what's going on, I promise you that they will do whatever they can to protect you, to make sure that you're here to experience the life that they gave to you. God bless you all. I hope you guys get something out of this. And as I've heard people say before about if one person can take something away from it, then I've done what I should do. And I actually believe that now. So God bless you guys. Bye.